Modern geologists use sophisticated dating techniques to analyse the chalk in between the flint bands. Darwin has none of these methods to age rocks. Instead, he has ingenuity and the speed at which the sea erodes the chalk.
As you can see, these are wonderful white cliffs, and we can see they're cracked.
Amazing.
And beneath us, the sea comes in, it breaks against the base of the cliff, it erodes it away.
So the sea's slowly eating away the rock, and the rock then falls away?
Yes. And calculations, even in Darwin's day, were made on these cliffs. And Darwin used those calculations to work out the rate of erosion of the landscape in southern England.
Darwin takes the figure for cliff erosion, about an inch a century, and applies it to the ancient chalk mountain that had once existed. Now he can calculate how long the sea would have taken to erode the dome away. Here's how it goes. If the sea erodes an inch of chalk in 100 years, then to erode 1 mile of chalk, it will take the sea over 6.3 million years. To erode a chalk mountain nearly 50 miles across will take much longer, almost 50 times as long, and the total time 306,662,400 years. Darwin estimates that the whole of southeast England is at least this age. And planet Earth must be even older. In fact, modern scientists have discovered that the Earth is at least 4 billion years old. With Darwin's clever calculation, he has everything he needs to make his theory work. Enough time for evolution to happen. Even though much of the science is in place, Darwin still lacks a final element: the confidence to make his ideas public. From the start of his work, Darwin worries about the scientific and religious backlash. When he first recognises the power of evolution, he writes, "It's like confessing to a murder." His wife Emma is in no doubt about the principal victim. God is missing from her husband's universe. She feels her husband risks eternal damnation.
Think how hard it must have been for the two of them. Although Emma loved her husband, she was a devout Christian, and she was really worried where his work was heading. So what did they do about the problem? They avoided it. Night after night they sat here and played backgammon, not talking about evolution.
Typical of Darwin, he keeps a record of every game they play. I wonder how Darwin can gather so much evidence in support of his theory and still be reluctant to publish. So I asked Professor David Cohen.
He hides his theory. He really delays, keeps it virtually a secret for many years. I mean, he only tells one person during a 15, 16-year period about natural selection. You know, the calm, the sort of the bright face of nature, having underneath it this war of all against all. And part of his job as an exponent of this theory is to bring people to understand the relationship between the harmony in nature and the beauty in nature and the diversity in nature and this individual struggle that's going on underneath between, you know, all organisms. What Darwin has discovered in natural selection is a law that explains the origin of species and the origin of adaptations. In other words, all the diversity of life. And it pushes God out of that business in a way that, in a sense, the discovery of gravity pushes God out of controlling the fall of every feather.
At the heart of Darwin's theory is the idea that species evolve over millions of years. Go back in time and you find that all animals have common ancestors. Find these shared ancestors and you find proof of evolution.
Let me show you what Darwin means when he uses the term shared ancestry. I keep a lot of pigs, a lot of different rare breed and different forms of pigs. This one here is a Tamworth, lovely pig with a lovely sort of gingery coat. And this one here, totally different. This one's a saddleback. That's a black pig with a lovely white band.
They may all look different, but they have a lot in common. They're all pigs, and you don't need much imagination to work out that umpteen generations ago, they all had the same ancestor. In theory, you could go all the way back to a wild boar that was tamed in Europe 6,000 or 7,000 years ago.
The big leap Darwin makes is to think the unthinkable. Where did the original wild boar come from? Was there a shared ancestor of wild boar with its other relatives, like the camel, hippo and goat? Eventually, a family tree for all mammals. If he's correct, it would mean that the pig shares the same ancestor as a dog and even a rabbit. But Darwin knows he has to find hard scientific evidence to prove this ancestry.
One obvious place to look is fossils. We take them for granted, but in Darwin's day, they're big news. At the Great Exhibition of 1851, people flocked to see huge model dinosaurs based on fossils that have just been found. Some think fossils are animals that failed to make it onto Noah's Ark and drowned in the flood. But Darwin is sure there will be key evidence that animals have evolved. He expects to find fossils of intermediate forms that provide the link between different groups of animals. But none have yet been discovered. Without these elusive shared ancestors, Darwin has to look elsewhere.